9 o'clock. Meeting will come to order. Please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we usually have public comment after that, right?
Yeah, after.
Yeah, I think the line for public comment is missing, but anyone have a public comment? Right. I couldn't remember which order we did this in. We have any change? Thank you. You want to sit right up? No? Any additions to the agenda?
I would like to subtract from the agenda. I guess it's, we were going to go into closed session.
Uh-huh.
That won't be necessary at this time.
Right. Okay.
Strike that from appointments.
Anything else? Anybody? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have minutes from the last meeting. Any additions, corrections to those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, public comment?
Brian Van Gorp, Yucatan Township. After about 50 years of trying to get various things done at various levels of government, I've come to understand that the number one problem in government is inertia. People are usually afraid to do anything because doing anything kind of pisses somebody off. And I'll use the example of raising mileage standards in cars. Obviously, that's good for people because it's cheaper to drive, and it's good for the environment because there's less pollution. But it doesn't happen. Why? Because car manufacturers and petroleum companies are special interests and they don't want it to happen. Well, in Houston County, mining is that special interest that prevents doing what's right for the people and for the environment. A few years ago, we had what I'm pretty sure is the largest public hearing ever held in this county. There were several hundred people, and they were nearly unanimous, greater than 90%, asking for a ban on frac sand mining. The will of the people was crystal clear. At that time, your county attorney, as well as the consulting land use attorney from the Minnesota Association of Counties, both told you that a ban was possible, legal, and defendable. The county board, lacking the courage to take a leadership role, chose to throw the citizens under the bus. Instead, they chose to enable mining interests over the environment and used the excuse that they were afraid of a lawsuit. Well, Winona County went ahead and took action on the ban. It was challenged in court, and as you probably know by now, withstood that challenge. The ban is legal, as we knew all along. You were wrong in your fears. Part of the judge's ruling in the Winona case is that it is not a takings to ban certain land use activities. Attorney Walsh advised the board at the time that that was the case. But your favoritism for mining had no limits. If banning frac sand mining is legal and not a takings, then certainly enforcing the ordinance is not a takings. You could enforce the ordinance against illegal non-conforming mines in this county. Now, Houston County is at greater risk than ever. Oil prices are rising, so fracking will increase. Winona County is protected. Fillmore County has severely limited mining activity. That means we're the next place to be exploited. We know you did not have the courage to be a leader or to do the right thing. Do you even have the courage to be a Me Too? I hope so, because it's time to take action and ban frac sand mining in Houston County. Thank you.
I'm just gonna, if this, no, go ahead. If this is the same subject, make it short, because we do either want one person to represent a point of view or,
Absolutely.
okay, so,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Jeremy Chips, 1406 Willow Street, La Crescent. Chair and Commissioners, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. What I wish to inform you of today is tell you a quick story, and then also I do want to touch briefly on two things. One is the frac sand mining issue and the decision in Winona, and your decisions forthcoming. And also 13 rail cars that were derailed, sand cars, frac sand, in La Crescent. A lady approached me yesterday. Her cousin has a small child, a young girl. She has been seen by her doctor, and obviously has what sounds like, she told me, the beginnings of silicosis, lung damage to a small child. The issue with that is that they wondered how did this child develop this? It's north of here. There's HIPAA regulations. As you know, I know a little bit about healthcare, so I'm not going to get into detail. It's actually on the other side of the state, and it's on the other side of the river, in Wisconsin. But the child clearly, the family lives surrounded by frac sand mining. The child is sick. And frankly, those of us in healthcare know that if doctors were sitting around, they know the prognosis that this child, as she grows older, will suffer and will probably die an early death from causes of silicosis or similar type lung damage, bronchial. I want you to think about that for a minute and put yourself in the position of the mother and the family, a sick child. I'm going to tell you another thing that I found out this week. There are at least 6 persons from a mine who reported to a clinic for their routine examination. Guess what? They failed their bronchial examination. They probably got up and went to work this morning like most people. They shouldn't, because they're not to the medical standard. I, again, cannot explain to you, I'm not even going to tell you where it's happening, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, and for certain legal reasons, there's a number of reasons I can't elaborate, but it's very serious. I come to you this morning with people who are affected by their health. I come to you to share the risk of damage to our water system, our ecosystem, our economy, our tourism, and various things that frac sand mining does is damaging people and damaging our land and damaging our water today in Wisconsin and anywhere else where frac sand mining is at. It's very high risk. So I say to you this, I would exhort you to move today, not 60 days from now, not 6 months from now, or to see what else happens in Winona. I would exhort you to move towards a resolution toward banning frac sand mining in Houston County. Why? Let's just ask ourselves, when you and I hire a doctor, our family hires a doctor or an accountant or a lawyer, we look to those professionals to guide us. They don't tell us what to do. Years ago, my first mentor said, you tell the accountant or the doctor or the lawyer what you want done, and they guide you on what the law is. Attorney Yant, a good attorney, cannot tell you what to do moving forward. What Winona does, or any appeal or legal wrangling they have in Winona, is up to them, and that does not justify whether they should make a decision on allowing frac sand mining or not. Your forecasting or looking forward has nothing to do with legal challenges in Winona. Pray tell, even if you banned frac sand mining and a company came to you and said, oh, we've lost $2 million based on your action, we've got loss of revenue. So what? The ethical, keyword, and moral responsibility you have is to ban frac sand mining. Well, it doesn't matter whether there may be a legal challenge. There would perhaps be legal challenges. But you should not base your decisions on what Attorney Yant tells you in terms of what you should do or not legally. He is the legal advisor, but that does not give you absence of ethical and moral decisions of making the right call for people of Houston County. And so I ask you, with the greatest respect, especially after you've done the research on this, don't wait 60 days to see if there's an appeal. Don't wait 6 months. Don't watch the legal wranglings and duration of legal challenges in other places. It matters not to you and your decision making. You do what's ethically right. And if people want to come after Houston County, let them. Moreover, let me caution you to not make a decision if La Crescent, for example, the city of La Crescent lost their say there was an impact, say in the township of La Crescent, Commissioner Walters, we had a frac sand mine, or anywhere else. If a township or a city then is affected, children have silicosis, people are injured, people are sick, roads, the cost of roads and taxes increase, we lose our water, Houston County could be liable from the other side. So I ask you, please make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Just out of personal curiosity, how many of you saw the news of the derailment in the media?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I missed it initially, and it's happened about a half mile from my house, and I began to wonder why the trains going by were blowing their horn and ringing a bell. And so I said, do we have a new crossing I missed? Because otherwise oh no, they're warning the people down there that they're coming through and so forth. So it never really stopped train traffic to any extent, but it's bothersome to have a derailment of anything, but especially something like this. So anyway, thank you, folks. So, Bruce?
On a different matter?
Quickly, please. We're kind of behind our agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bruce Chemical from Caledonia, Minnesota. It's my understanding that you're looking at whether or not a position of county administrator would be the right course from this point onward. And the other option would be to look at a coordinator position.
Correct.
And it's my understanding that the administrator is one that actually is conceded power from the board. Is that my understanding? In other words, that the
Has board
administrator can
decision-making,
actually make a decision without your presence.
They have statutory authority to make certain decisions, yes.
Okay, and is that specifically delineated in the statute as to what he or she can and cannot do?
Yeah. You
Or
want
is there
the
some
statutes?
negotiation?
Yeah. You want the statutes?
If you just,
I've got them if
know-
you want to look them up or whatever. Real quick here. Where's that one? Okay, here. You can look in statute 375, .48 and 49 and 50. And the other one is 375A.06. Are a few.
Well, thank
Anything
you.
near or around there too might pertain.
So are you on a timeline when you might make a decision like this, or are you just kicking the,
Still researching.
Very preliminary.
okay?
We're at a very preliminary stage in this,
Okay.
Bruce.
And
Don't
the point would
don't
be that
panic
there's
yet.
nothing in the budget for next year that would accommodate that position anyway?
Carol did some financial things. There very possibly could be. There's different ways. I think Carol found like 5 different ways to finance it, and depending on what happens with the budget this year,
Okay.
there possibly could be. Depends on what the board wants to do.
And this would be, if you decided that you would desire an administrator or a coordinator, would there be hearings on that?
As far as in what do you mean?
To
Like a
create the
pub-
position?
Like a public hearing?
Yeah,
I don't
There
know.
doesn't have to be.
there doesn't
would-
have to be.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. just have a few quick updates for you, and then one action item. The updates are, as you all probably heard, Camp Winnebago has sold, and I wanted to just let you all know that we did recover the loan funds that we had loaned out to them, including the interest. So that's taken care of. We are going to be looking at a loan application next week, the EDA. There's a local business who is working on a succession plan, which is good news because a lot of businesses struggle with that. So that's one thing that will be coming down the pike in probably the next couple of months. And I had mentioned before a project that I'm kind of working on with the Workforce Development and the Perkins Consortium to help build some pipelines between schools and businesses in Houston County. And that's got a lot of good momentum, and we're still researching, and I've been having individual meetings with superintendents, principals, business owners, and so we have a planning meeting next week, and then I'm hoping in the first couple months of the year to have more solidified vision of what that's going to look like to come before you. And then the last thing, which is the action item, the EDA has received a letter from Merchants Bank asking for our subordination to Merchants for the refinancing of Guest House LLC, which is operating as Little Miami. The EDA has made a loan to them in the past. Right now they have about a $19,000 balance, so not huge. When the business was purchased, the current owners took a loan out from Eitzen State Bank, the EDA, and a contract for deed. So right now the EDA is in second position behind a $40,000 mortgage from the Eitzen State Bank. Merchants and the business owners would like to buy out essentially that loan to the bank as well as a contract for deed. So essentially our EDA position would maintain the same at the second position. However, the first position, I know this is a lot of details and numbers and things, but essentially that would grow from about $40,000 to $160,000 because they would be assuming the contract for deed. Does that all make sense? And so the reason I'm coming before you today is that several of our EDA members actually are working on this professionally, and so there was several conflicts of interest. And I spoke with the attorney, and we just thought it would be more comfortable to bring the decision right to you. It's also a little time sensitive because the bank and the business are wanting to get this refinanced here in the last month of the year. So they had asked for a subordination authority from the commissioners, and I'd just like to discuss that and see what you think.
So let me see if I get this straight.
Okay.
So they want to refinance. In order to do so, they got to buy out their contract for deed and the loan from the EDA. Is that
Not the loan from the EDA.
Okay,
Nope.
so that'll still stand.
We would maintain the loan.
Okay.
They want to buy out the another bank's loan and the contract for deed.
Okay.
So essentially, the first position and the third position would all be moving into the first position.
So they're just going to streamline it to only have
Right.
to.
Make one payment,
One payment to
instead
one
of, and then,
entity, and
you know,
I
dealing
see.
with a contract for deed is sometimes volatile for businesses, I believe, and so that's just something that the business has wanted to do, I guess, for years.
Okay.
The business has been paying, very faithfully. I don't have any concerns. It actually makes me feel good about the business's financial health that an institution is willing to take on the risk of an additional $120,000 contract for deed loan. So, like I said, the bank has written a letter to the EDA asking for that subordination so they can close on that refinancing. So that's kind of the action item that I lay before you.
Okay, so essentially, if the business begins to fail, doesn't go back to the previous owners, the bank will then be the...
The bank would have the first position, yep, and we would have the second.
There is no talk of assuming the EDAs also?
No, I'd asked about that, but I think with the interest rate that we have, it was just more competitive for them to maintain their loan.
Just doesn't seem, doesn't make a lot of sense for us to, unless we feel that there's a better chance of getting paid with the bank possibly taking over compared to an owner, but we've lowered ourselves in position considerably too.
Yeah, the position, the second position is the same, but you're right. The money-wise, yes. One thing that I've been thinking about a little bit with this is the fact that the value of the loan would be very comparable to the value of the property, both the equipment and the property itself. So I'm fairly confident that if the loan were to go bad, that we would get some reparations for that. But you're right, it's a risk. One of the things that I have been thinking about too is, if this were to come up to us now asking for gap financing for this project, I think that's in line with what we would do. But ultimately the decision would be up to you.
How much interest rate could there be difference to make a difference on $19,000 on 100 out of 140? This doesn't seem like enough that they couldn't swallow that with it and be done and have one position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure what the interest rate from the bank is, but I think ours was 2%. So I doubt the bank was.
Bank's not going to be.
Yeah.
Well,
Any other questions or clarifications? I know it's kind of complicated, and I've been having trouble even getting all the details straight, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
I think.
I have one.
Mhm.
Attorney Yount, you've been involved in this situation?
To the extent that I've said it's something the board, because of the conflict, the board should
Yeah.
be giving an answer to, and you seem to understand what the issues are, is that
Yeah.
we come back into it, we're in a neutral position here that we would be on the top fence rail.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Normally, we're in what they're asking us to be in, which is subordinate.
Yeah.
And so you're just giving up that security. That said, if the business unfortunately would fail and they went bankrupt, whether you're on top or the bottom on that,
Really doesn't matter.
doesn't
No.
matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We're talking EDA funds, not county funds.
Yeah, we're talking, the revolving loan fund.
How does EDA feel?
Well, the EDA, I've spoken with the financial committee, and like I said, there's several conflicts of interest, and so we felt like it shouldn't even go to the EDA because of that.
So real no response that we can take in. from
Right.
there.
I've gotten a positive response from the folks that I've talked to about, this, as a gap financing agency, this is something that we probably would do if we came as a new loan, to take the second position and give a much lower loan than a bank would. So it's not out of the ordinary, but he's right. This is kind of an interesting position to be in because we are usually at the very bottom of the totem pole, and now we're finding ourselves having to shift that. So.
So you just need a motion to approve.
Subordination to Merchants Bank, if that's what you feel like you have to do.
What do you think?
I just don't see any gain for Houston County.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing to think about is just that the business is asking for this. This is kind of something that they see as a healthy financial decision for the business to take. And, as the EDA, we want to make sure that we're supporting them in the best way that we can. And I guess I trust with the way they've handled themselves and their business and their relationships with their bankers, that this is the best kind of route for them to take for themselves. It is a little bit tricky on our end, but I think, if our bottom line is to support the business, we have to just trust that they know, what they're doing moving forward with their bank.
Let me ask you a question, and maybe if I'm not following this right or I'm not looking at this the right way, point it out, but, so before they were under contract for deed,
Mm-hmm.
okay? If they were to go bankrupt under contract for deed, and the land, the entity, everything would go back to the landowner, right? To the deed,
Mhm.
deeder, I guess you'd say, right? So if we go through the bank and take the deed, the previous owner out of the equation, and they go bankrupt, the bank technically then could sell the property and would be more apt to get our money back versus if it went to the landowner would say, well,
Right.
tough, I got my money back, see y'all later, you guys are screwed. So I'm wondering if it would be more secure to go this route if something did go bad, that the bank's obviously not gonna sell it and get in the restaurant business, or they're not gonna wanna get it, they're gonna wanna sell it, and then we would recoup the money easier than if it went back to the deeded, or the deeder. Does that,
Well,
Yeah.
of
am I
course,
following that right?
if there's anything left over after the bank.
That's what I'm
gets
saying,
there.
but you'd have a better chance at it
Yeah,
if it was from
yeah,
a bank
yeah.
versus if it just went back to the previous owner, right?
Oh, I think so. But it just.
Well, I guess the other thing I guess gives me a comfort level is that the EDA, it's not out of the county's general fund. It's EDA revolving
It's
loan
EDA
fund.
funds anyway,
Yeah,
so,
and,
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't like to see the EDA eat anything either, but if it, EDA or the county, I'd vote for EDA. You know, so,
And like I said, the business has been doing well. They've been making their payments. I don't foresee any issue or change with that. So I guess that gives me a level of comfort too, just knowing that we are seeing that payment every month.
and if we all would just go down there and eat occasionally, that would be,
That would help.
yeah. Okay,
I'll
Let's,
move approval.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Other questions for Courtney or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Brian? Morning.
Good morning. I have two items today. The first one is to approve the final for project SAP 028-599-090, which is a bridge replacement project on Bush Valley Road. Contractor was Zinke Inc. Original contract was $230,127.01. The work certified is $417.02. The $14,000 worth of overrun is primarily pretty much all riprap. There's extra rock that's put down along the inslope of the roadway on the one side, along with by the pipe to protect it from future erosion. So, recommend approval of that.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Second item is Mount Prairie Township's looking to submit for some special funding from the state. It's local road improvement program funding. Been speaking with Mount Prairie Township, and I actually spoke with Brownsville Township earlier this fall about them potentially having a project as well to submit. It's a competitive project they're submitting against, but they wanted other townships and counties around the state. And what they would like to do is make some improvements to South Ridge Road up in, goes between Houston County 25 to Winona County 103. So Winona County Road 103 turns into Mount Prairie Township's South Ridge Road. If this project is selected, the county essentially becomes the fiscal agent and the go-between between the state and the townships. So county needs to be involved with all aspects of the project, just like any other county project. So because of that, the state requires that the project has a sponsor of the county because we will have major involvement with the project. Funding-wise would all be covered though by the townships. So my recommendation is to approve the resolution as drafted, and then the township will submit that to the state, and we'll hear back in a few months as far as if they get approval for the project or not. What they want to do is they want to put in some cement stabilized base, like what we were looking at doing on County 15, and then also do a double chip seal on top of that to make it function more like a paved road.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Sure. If you can give me a copy of that resolution as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Aaron?
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning, Aaron.
I have 3 items this morning. 2 items are CUP recommendations from the most recent Planning Commission meeting. I brought 1 last week to expedite the permitting process, but there's 2 remaining. The first is a CUP application for a cabin in an agricultural district by Thomas Saul. This is a cabin he built previously in his farmstead with the intent to sell, and has since decided that he will no longer be selling, and he would like to permit the location for it. It's essentially located within the existing farmstead. It would be about a 100-foot relocation from where it was built and has been sitting for sale previously. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this with the condition that the permittee comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations. If you have any questions about that, I can field those.
Motion to approve the permit.
Second.
Could I have you add to adopt the findings as recommended by the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I want to
And
add that.
and the
Yep,
condition?
fine. Sure.
Second, okay with that?
Second. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
The second is a conditional use permit for a non-farm dwelling in an ag district. This is for William and Karen Kohlmeyer. They're a co-applicant with Wayne Hodak, who's the current landowner. There's an agreement to purchase approximately 7 acres to build a home. Because it's less than 40 acres, the CUP is needed. Planning Commission recommended approval of this with 2 conditions. The first being that they comply with all federal, state, local laws and regulations, and the second being that the CUP is contingent on the split of the parcel as proposed. A survey was done, and that the ownership in the new parcel must be wholly or partially that of the Kohlmeyers. So the CUP is exclusive for them, not another buyer. This application satisfies all the criteria for a non-farm dwelling. A specific location has yet to be determined, but the proposed parcel has the ability to meet all the criteria, and the zoning permit would only be issued if the proposed location satisfies all the performance standards.
Motion to approve the permit with conditions.
I'll second it.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Lastly, in your packets, you have a 2018-2019 feedlot program delegation agreement. This lays out the county's strategies for the next 2 years in administering the state's feedlot program. The MPCA has approved this, so now we're just waiting on board approval of the work plan. A lot of the information contained in here, or the strategy contained in here, is mandated by the program. We do have a little leeway to focus on areas we might want to prioritize. In this case, we're looking at the Pine Creek watershed, and that's based on a soil and water recommendation. So we're looking at doing 6 inspections on feedlots in that watershed in the next 2 years. I should also mention that we are nearly completed our re-registration process. The number of feedlots in the county has gone down slightly. I think right now we are at 360-ish registered sites. Previously we were around 400 420.
414.
Yeah, something in that range. There's still a couple folks who we haven't heard back from, and we are also registering some sites that, for whatever reason, weren't previously registered. But the ultimate number will almost certainly be lower than the previous number, which will mean our grant will drop slightly. It's based on the number of feedlots.
It has nothing to do with animal units.
No, it has to do with number of registered sites. So you could have 200 sites, and they all could have 900 animal units, or they all could have 51 animal units, and the PCA would look at it the same. Any questions on the delegation plan?
It's pretty unwieldy almost, but
Yeah, a lot of the information that they sort of coax out of you, it gives you select from these options that we provide and tell us which ones you're going to utilize. So a limited amount of discretion that we're exercising in completing this.
okay.
This I should also say is it's open to amendment throughout the process, so we'll be bringing on a new individual who will be taking the lead on this program. They would have the opportunity at any time during this term to revisit the plan. That would require PCA.
Where's that at, Aaron?
The application period's closed.
Okay.
Rick and I will be taking the first look at the applications this afternoon.
Very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? So you need a motion to approve
Correct, yeah.
the plan.
I'll move approval.
I'll second it.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you, Commissioners.
thank you. Dave, good morning.
Good morning.
Yep.
So, back in September, we visited a little bit about the matching fund option through the state of Minnesota for the SWCD. And due to the enlightenment of the feedlot position that you folks went ahead on, means a cut to our office. And this would be a great opportunity to take advantage of these state funds at this time to help backfill our budget. So what it means for the county is $14,400. The state would match that 1-to-1, which would be about a wash with the feedlot program. So I'd like to have you guys visit with that a little bit, and if you guys think that's a good choice, I'd like you to act on that.
So, for some background, the feedlot, it was what, 50 or 55?
Correct, 50,000.
50.
Yep.
So the 14,400 that you're short, where was that going when you had the feedlot officer? Where was that being used?
We didn't have it. You declined it last year, so we didn't have it last year. So this is new money coming in.
Okay, so I'm trying to get a grasp on something. So, forgive me if this is going to be kind of elementary.
No problems.
So you were getting money from, was it Bowser or was it the state that was funding the feedlot officer, right?
Right. It was Bowser originally.
Mhm.
Now it's the MPCA.
Okay.
Yep.
So they were funding the position, right?
Correct.
So if they were funding the position goes away, I would think if you were given 50,000, the 50,000 went away. It didn't cost me anything more. I guess I'm trying to get a handle on where the additional 14,000 was coming from. You know what I'm saying? If they were giving you 50,000 for the thing and all of a sudden they're taking away, your budget wouldn't have been impacted if they were giving you the money to spend on the position. Where was the 14,000 going?
Okay, so what happened was that the feedlot money was given to the county.
Yeah.
And then the county was giving that to us.
Okay.
Okay? You're still getting that money. You're just giving it to somebody else. So my budget, in turn, got cut that amount.
The 50,000.
Right.
Okay.
So now this is a new opportunity that we didn't take advantage of before that is still in place to help backfill our cuts.
But, okay. I'm probably getting a little dense on this one because I'm not getting it. But
No worries, no worries.
if you had a position that was getting funded by somebody, right?
Right.
And that position went away, in essence, your budget really didn't get cut because you weren't having to come up with that money to begin with, right?
No. So what that was a match too. So that was a one-to-one match. So you were giving us 25,000. My budget was matching that 25,000 to get that 50,000.
Okay, so it wasn't, the MPCA didn't just give you 50,000.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
that's where I
Yep.
guess I was confused
Yep.
because I was thinking, well, that shouldn't have mattered.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so it was a $25,000 match.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And now with this going away, we could do a match of 14,000 because of the,
400. Yep.
or 400
Yep.
to, for your budget.
Right. So there again, that would be a one-to-one match. So
Well, basically, your budget has taken a $25,000 hit, basically,
you got it. Yep.
by putting the feedlot back to Houston County.
Correct.
Okay.
Because you were matching half of that money, but had to do the work.
Correct.
Not doing the work now, which was 50,000 worth of work. Still making sure I see
Yeah, I'm getting confused too because if you
where the
Yep.
loss is.
Yeah,
yeah,
well-
because
well-
if you had the position and got rid of the position, you don't have the work. So then,
Right.
Right.
So
How would you use the 14, I guess is what we're,
Very good, Jack. So we're going to put a work plan, the state's requiring a work plan to get done. So this money will be used for us to go out to the landowners, address resource concerns, and put conservation practices on the land. And that's a wide variety. I mean, it could still be used for some feedlot practices. It could be our meat and potatoes, waterway structures, revetment, just the whole broad spectrum of what the resource concern is.
So basically, you're going to use that matching grant with the state, even though it's been reduced to 14,000, you would use it for a new program for
Much of-
conservation practices?
Yeah, not so much a new program, just backfilling of what we've been getting cut and this
Okay.
work that we still do.
Now, what you're, excuse me, what you're proposing to do with this 14,000 is work that you have been doing before or haven't been doing?
What we have been doing.
Okay,
It can be used for new stuff as well.
okay.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So I move it up to 39, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So so here's my question, and I just want to make sure that because I'm trying to wrap my head around because this is kind of a complicated thing.
Sure.
So if you had 25,000 that was coming out of your budget and it was matched 25.
Correct.
So we pulled the position back to the county. So now the county has to come up with the 25 to get matched for our side of it, right?
Correct.
So you still, in your budget, let's say, still could have had the 25,000. You just weren't getting the match for the other 25. But now you're asking for a match on 14, right?
Right.
So I guess my question is, couldn't you use that 25 that you would have had in your budget to match that? Or was
No,
that taken?
That was taken out of our county allocation.
Okay,
So
okay,
it has, that's where it has to come from.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was a
Was
question
taken-
Scott
Now
had
I'm,
before.
okay,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I'm trying to piece together
No,
this.
no worries.
where
We
money
gotta,
was
yeah,
coming
get
and going
everybody
from.
on the same page, so.
So you just want 14 of the 25 back?
Right, you're actually,
Yes.
yeah, in that sense, you
Yes.
know,
I see.
we'd be getting 9,000 less from you, from the 25, basically.
Still confused. Still doesn't seem like there's a loss, is what I'm, I just want to make sure we understand that you didn't have a loss.
We did, we had that $25,000 loss.
Taken out of their budget.
Right. But you did should be doing 25,000 less work because of feedlot being gone.
Right, right. But still, that funded a position at our office.
That's what I'm gonna get
Yep,
at
so,
next was,
so now,
the money is equal, but say it was a .5 person, how do you get rid of a .5 person?
correct,
You
right.
know, that-
So it'd be layoffs or what have you.
If you had 25,000 into a person, that was pretty cheap, but somebody else is paying 25 towards that person,
You got her.
so it is extra money over the budget in reality. But would be going towards funding for that person to do something, enhancement of your programs.
Right, right.
I would
And,
think.
and when I put the work plan together, we're gonna look at the full budget. Some of this money is gonna be used for practices. It's not even to budget a position. So,
I just want to make sure we're all clear on how this is working, that,
Now, Dave, what happens if we don't approve this?
then I'd be looking at cuts to my budget, which is probably going to be more than likely staff time. I'll have to just take a look at what the budget has. We could cut in other areas, like the practices that are going out on the land itself. So instead of using $25,000 worth of project money, we might be using 10, which we don't want to do. We want to keep the conservation on the ground. That's our main mission, you know.
Okay, so now I guess I'm confused again.
Sorry.
So if, thanks, Fred. So if you had, if you got the 14,000 and you had that match, you said it would go towards practices. But then you said that if you didn't get the money, you'd have to make cuts. I guess my question is, who was doing the work? If you got to make cuts, who was doing the work when you had the feedlot person there? Because obviously the work wouldn't have been getting done unless you were subsidizing some of the feedlot money to do this work anyway, right?
Right, right. So the technicians did the feedlot work. And now the technicians, if you approve this, will be doing the conservation work, which still could be feedlot work, a wide variety of projects. So there wouldn't really be much change. Now, if you don't approve this, like Scott said, we're losing the 25 that we have to make up somewhere in the budget. And where's that cut going to happen? It could be staff time. It could be projects.
Some of the dams projects that, from the flooding issues.
Right, right.
That we've had over the years.
So basically the feedlot, you were getting paid for a full-time position, but it really wasn't full-time.
It was. So what we do with that, Justin, is that we figured we got 25,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have our wages that we earn, and everybody owns or earns a little bit different wage. So we put so many hours worked to use up the 50,000.
The only reason why I'm asking that question is because, the county kind of took that on themselves, and I guess anticipating that there was going to be quite quite a bit of work in the feedlot, but if there's not going to be that much work in the feedlot,
Yeah, I don't know what the strategy
Well-
was to hire a new person when we were doing the work anyways.
here's what I'm getting at, and I'll be kind of blunt. It seems at least from what I'm hearing, it seems like, well, we had the money for a feedlot person, but everybody else was kind of chipping and doing the work. Now that the money's gone, we can't continue to do the same work. You know, you didn't hire anybody to do that. Everybody that still exists, you still had the same FTEs getting the same work done, right?
Right.
So now that 50,000 is gone, you still have the same amount of FTEs doing the work. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I understand if you had bought a new FTE to do the work, and now you're saying we have one less person, so the work's not getting done. But if your FTE stayed the same, and they were doing work and then compensating, I guess I'm just failing to see where.
Well, historically, we always got that money.
Okay.
So in reality, that person in the office, that was their job,
Which person?
doing the feedlot work.
Yeah,
Right.
but you're just saying that you had other people in the office all doing some of the work.
Right. So, very good question. So, we have technical dollars, we got feedlot dollars, we got revetment dollars, and we all work together. We don't have one person doing feedlots, one person doing revetment. We all, do it together. A lot of times it takes two people to do the surveys and the designs and that sort of work anyway. So we had someone in charge of the program and looking over the program, but it's not the only person working that program.
Right. And I guess that's where I'm getting at is now you took the feedlot duties away, but you still have the same FTEs. It sounds like that should have freed up their time to do more.
But there's no money there for them to work a different job.
But I mean, if they're employed for 8 hours a day, right?
Right, and let's say 2 of those hours a day were doing feedlots.
Yep.
Now that 2 hours a day isn't there.
Right.
Now, is that person 3/4 time? I mean, there's no other money to backfill that. That's where this 14,400 come into play.
Right, but what were you doing before that feedlot deal was going on? Because I guess I say if the FTEs were the same 10 years ago or whatever as they are today, the feedlot program used to be here in the county, then it moved over, but you didn't hire anybody, right?
I've been here 20 years and we've been doing feedlots for 20 years. So that position has always been at our office. And I can tell you that maybe the answer to your question, Justin, was that our county allocation in 2008 was close to 160,000. Now it's 125. So we've been getting cut, over the last 10 years as well from the county. So maybe that plays part of it too. We're counting on that money more than what we used to.
Okay. Because Bob was the feedlot officer when he was here at the county, correct?
Correct.
So when he was here at the county, what was the soil and waters duties?
The same
With it.
as what they were after he left. So we did the inspections, we did the construction, we did the design, survey, install, spot checks afterwards, manure management, the whole realm. Basically what the feedlot officer did was the permitting and the registration. And we even helped out with the registration.
Dave, check me on this, but what I think I'm seeing is that over the years, the workload in this area, because of various and assorted regulations, the workload has increased.
There's a lot of work to be done. If you folks remember, like the year 2000, the open lot agreement came into play. which mean that all the feedlots had to be half in compliance 2005, fully in compliance 2010. Here we are, 2017, and still a lot of work to be done. As you know, with the water plant, all the manure storages we put in, and filter strips and picket structures and that sort of work. So yeah, a lot of work has been done, and a lot of work needs to be done yet.
Well, you've had different regulations come down from the state
True.
relative to the buffers and different water things, increases the workload in your office.
Correct, correct.
And so that work is still there, and you need somebody to do it,
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
what it amounts to.
Yeah, yeah. When that enforcement buffer money came down too, visiting with Rick and Aaron, we were, at that moment, we were talking about the district would be the lead on that as well, but my understanding now with this new feedlot officer, some of that workload is going to be done by that individual as well too. So there again, what I was assuming that we'd be working on is not going to be there either. So, and there too, Fred, you know, like you say, there's a lot of work there and a lot of new rules and regulations and programs, and some others have sunsetted too. So, you know, things come and go quite a bit.
Yeah.
So in short, what we're looking for is to fund so that you don't have to cut any positions over there, is what you're asking for.
Yeah, and better to serve the landowners and their resource concerns as well.
It's not just the person, it's the work and the material and everything to do these dams and conservation practices.
Well, I get that, but I guess I'm still getting tripped up on the fact that you alleviated a lot of workload by not having to do the feedlot thing, so you'd have more time to serve the public, in theory. So it's just a matter of how do we fund so we don't have to cut a position. And I guess my question is, and has to be asked, is should there be a cut in a position? I mean, you know, that's the ultimate question is, you know, if you don't have enough work for people, then maybe you don't need so many people. I guess is basically what it's boiling down to.
That's
And we're
why I
saying,
asked the question that I just asked.
yeah, and I guess it's just a matter of, do we want to make a cut or do we want to put more money to do more stuff? I guess is what it boils down to.
And I think you hit it on the head there, Justin, saying that there's not enough work to be, should there be a cut? There's more work in that office that can get done.
Well, that's what I'm saying is do you put 14,000 into it to do more work, or do you eliminate a position? That's
Right.
that's the
Thing,
fork
you
in the
know,
road.
on how you wanna,
And we gotta look at it that we are increasing a budget, as far as we're concerned. We're increasing a budget. But I do see where you were putting 25 and getting a full person out of that 25. That 25 you're not putting anymore, but that's not a full person.
correct.
You know, we took 25.
But,
Yeah, in reality.
but that 25 was our 25, was it not?
Right, well, half of it.
It was
half of the
passed
50
through.
was ours.
Yeah, it was passed through.
And the other
Yeah.
25 was grant,
Was out of our allocation.
Right.
which comes by via grant, right?
No, well, through the county.
Well, the county gave 25, and then MPCA gave the other 25, right?
Okay, MPCA gave 25,
Yep.
and I gave 25.
Right, which was the allocation from the county.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's my point. It was county money. I mean, you don't print any over
Right.
there.
I wish we could.
My point is that he's only getting, 25 is being taken out of his budget.
Right.
But that was funding a full-time position, 50,000 worth of position. So when he takes 25, he quits giving that 25 out of the budget.
Right.
But he's losing 50,000 worth of work.
And the
I
thing,
mean, not,
That work's being transferred over here. I mean,
Right,
it's
but
not
no.
like,
but 25,000, but that doesn't fund a full position, is all I'm saying. I mean, that leaves him a half a position short, is all.
right, and you guys was,
Not that should really be ours to
Well,
deal with.
except again, what's left after the feedlot leaves I don't know what's left.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there's-
Like if-
Was the technician doing feedlot work exclusively?
It was spread throughout 4 technicians, absolutely.
Say that again.
There wasn't one person that was working that program 100% of the time. It was spread
Okay.
throughout 4 of us.
Okay.
But is it 6?
I'll go at it a little bit different way. The total amount of time in your office being spent on the feedlot portion of your workload would amount to how much full-time equivalent approximately?
Real close to 1, 3/4 to 1.
Okay. And then we took out a while, we're in the process of and almost done with it, but we took out about roughly half of a position
Correct.
is what we did. But yet what you're saying is that, okay, you don't have that particular work to do, but there's enough work there because of the additional work demanded by some regulations from the state on this water quality thing, broadly defined, that you're really kind of hurting for getting that stuff done.
You
If
got
you
it.
don't have the funding to staff, it just changes somebody's workload.
You got
But
it.
there's
Fred.
still plenty of work there to
Right.
do.
You
So-
got it.
so
You
if you-
got
I
it.
think that's where we're coming
Yep.
from.
You
Yeah,
got it.
Okay.
But now, with like what you just said, Fred, so if you would have kept the feedlot officer, you still would need to come to the county for more money for the additional workload that Fred's talking about.
Right, I came in front of the board last year and you guys denied it, this opportunity. And now it's an opportunity, it's a great opportunity, especially in sight of the 25,000 cut that we received. So, but yeah, you're right,
So you're saying it's basically the same offer you came forward with last year,
you got it.
just doing it again.
You got
So
it.
really, the feedlot thing shouldn't even be part of this argument.
The only reason why it's part of the argument is because we lost those funds and I'm trying to backfill those funds with this grant.
Right, but I mean, what I'm saying is that would be a moot point. The feedlot officer,
Yeah, I see
I think the
where you're
feedlot
coming from.
officer thing is getting in the
Yeah.
way, because that's a moot point whether or not that position existed. You need additional help to do the other work
And
needed.
he's requested it every year, and we usually,
Yeah,
we've just denied it because he was already getting some funding from the feedlot position. But you're right, it was a need the last 2 years or
But,
longer.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
but we're still, I mean, that 25 is now still coming out of county funds.
Well,
So
it's
an
4
additional 14 will be 39,000 out of county funds.
well, yeah, but I think we're confusing things, because, when we start talking about the feedlot stuff and whatever, if you would have still had the feedlot officer there, you would still be coming forward for additional help, just like you did last year. Now that you don't have it, that feedlot officer thing should be a moot point. The point is,
Yeah,
you
maybe
need
we should get off that
$14,000.
feedlot.
And it's
Yeah,
a
you need
matching
$14,000 to do additional work, is what you're asking.
You got it.
But,
Yeah, let's move off the feedlot thing. So you can say that you gave us 25, now you're giving us 14, which actually is a $9,000 cut. you know. But they're matching it, so it's a
I'm not so-
great opportunity.
Yeah, I guess I'm not talking the cut, I'm talking county expenditure, which would go up to 39,000 that we're contributing. Because we're contributing 25 to the 25 match, and I'm gonna bring feedlot back and feedlot, and then 14 for whatever you're suggesting you're
Right.
gonna do with it. So, it'd be an additional.
What we thought we were getting for nothing, we're gonna have to pay 14,000 for probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
that's about the size.
So, well, let's,
of it.
Justin
let's
hit it
make a
on the head.
decision here
He
and,
was a need anyway.
Yeah, and I guess-
Actually, we're using our buffer money for the zoning office for the feedlot and buffer regulations. So we're actually getting money from Bowser for the buffer zone.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not an additional 25,000 on top of 14.
No,
You're right, we should take the feedlot stuff out of the thing. He's asking for 14,000 matching state grant for work in his office,
Do more work.
to
out
do
of
more
this.
work
You
out
got
of
it,
them.
Scott, yep.
Exactly. I think
Yeah,
we should fund the 14,000 matching grant. I'll make that a
You-
motion.
if 14,400?
$14,400 and no cents.
Oh, dear.
That's what I got in front of me, figure-wise.
Yeah, 14.
Yeah, I'll second it.
I'm almost afraid to ask if there are any other questions. Anybody, comment, question?
No, let,
The state is, now, I can't, Teresa brought up the point that I had forgotten, and I can't remember the details of it, but the state is helping the county and the soil conservation people with this buffer law
You
thing.
got
And
it,
I
yeah.
can't remember how that comes down. Does Carol remember any of that?
In 2018, I believe we'll receive close to $60,000 buffer enforcement.
And that was additional money from what we had been getting before.
Right.
Yeah. It, of course, showed up in the budget, but, yeah, okay. But it,
Justin, did you have none?
no, I was just debating if I wanted to do a roll call on this, just to do it. I'm still confused with what's going on. Anyway, okay.
All right. Anyone else? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, and mainly because I'm still confused and need to see this written out a little bit more, but anyway.
All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
Yeah, the water plan.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. 10 o'clock, we're a little late. So,
So you need a motion to go into public hearing?
Well, we need to just recess this one, right?
Recess this one
then
and
go into
open the public
hearing.
Yeah.
I'll move that we recess the meeting in order to have the public hearing on the water plan.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Scott, move that down to me.
What, this one? This?
So when you vote that, I need to
Oh.
All right,
Did you get the
We
one
will-
underneath it?
we'll open the public hearing on the water plan. Gentlemen,
All right, so as you guys know,
but we don't know who you are. I don't anyhow.
I guess.
so, yeah,
Just state your name.
Dan Wormager from the Root River Soil and Water
Okay, Dan.
Conservation Office. And you guys might remember me, I was here on October 17th to have a public hearing about the amended local water plan. But, you know, I'm kind of new at this, so I did not put a public notice in the paper, so it wasn't an official public hearing. So we rescheduled it, got the notice in the paper, so now it's an official public hearing. And
You're kind of a veteran now, huh?
oh yeah, got this now. So I figured, I don't know, I'd just kind of briefly re-explain it and then open it up for comments.
Go for it.
Yeah. So nowadays there's basically two types of water plans, or local water plans, which is the way it's been for a while, you know, follow county lines. And now we're getting, I'll just call them regional water plans, which follow big watershed lines. And, you know, the thought process there is a focused effort within the watershed. It makes more sense instead of dividing our focused efforts by political boundaries. So as you also might know, for about a year now, we've had our regional water plan, which is the Root River One Watershed One Plan. And that encompasses 95% of the county. The only part that didn't get included is, in red there, is the Pine Creek watershed. So until that gets absorbed into a different regional water plan, we have to amend our local water plan to focus it on that Pine Creek area, just so that the entire county is covered under a water plan. So we put a 5-year extension on our local water plan, which is set to expire next month. And now we have amended it to focus it, customize it for that part of the county. So I sent out the draft to everybody, and it's available online. And yeah, just wondering if there's any more comments from you guys or the public. I've just received 2 comments, like I said last time. One from Bowser from the state and one from Department of Ag, and no changes were required. So those comments were addressed. So any comments or concerns from anyone else?
Nope, I think you explained it real well last time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you need a motion to approve the plan then?
We can't
no,
do it.
It was just, it's still in draft form, so
Okay.
just opening up for comments.
This is the public hearing.
Just to get information.
This is a public hearing that we had a practice run on before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Teresa, are you still nervous about the
That's about my,
Skunk
that's
Hollow
right
area?
below my house.
Yeah.
I know, probably are gonna be absorbed by Winona, right?
Yeah, most likely.
Mhm.
No comments?
Okay.
Were there any comments?
Jeremy,
Yes, sir.
did you want to comment on this?
The only thing I'd like to ask is, forgive me, I don't know the details of your discussion in great depth, so forgive me, I had no time to research what you're speaking of in general, but clearly one of the issues nationally, and especially regionally, from atrazine to fecal matter and other things getting in our water supply, whether it's in Michigan or Wisconsin, which has very serious problems. I just heard that Alaska has serious problems with their water, and they're looking into what that's about. Could you maybe share with us, from a scientific perspective, what testing's gone on? You spoke of Pine Creek. I live right next to Pine Creek, and I think a lot of people, both in townships and the larger cities in our area, Houston County, could you elaborate both for the public on camera and for us here today a little bit more on the process, what scientific testing's gone on, how we educate ourselves, and the purpose of what you're doing? Because forgive me, but I'm not fully clear on it, and I'm not very knowledgeable of the subject as you gentlemen might be, and maybe you could elaborate. And where we can go to find that scientific testing of what your plan is going to be forthcoming, and Pine Creek and other places.
Yep, so the water plan encompasses both, protecting surface water and groundwater like you're talking about. Some of the programs for testing groundwater is we have our volunteer nitrate well monitoring program, which we ship out test kits to private well owners, and they get the lab fees paid for testing their well water. That's focused on nitrates more. And then next year through Department of Ag, they focus a lot on groundwater quality. They're doing a township testing program, so about half the townships in the county got selected, and they'll be doing more testing on private wells. Public wells have to be tested, but not private, so it'll give us all a better idea of what's in there. Yeah, a lot of surface water stuff we do. As far as groundwater, what else?
Right, the MPCA has did an intensive water sampling over the last few years. They're compiling all those tests as we speak, and the report should be coming out real shortly on that. So
Have they noted any problems, or has your office noted any problems in Houston County? Is the balance of feedlots versus contamination of water, do you think we're in a safe zone or a caution zone, or is there any danger anywhere in the county or elsewhere in the state where your colleagues have mentioned there's issues that relate to feedlot?
Great, yep. We, so they're putting the reports together. We'll know more here 2018. We do have some hot spots on the well. Nitrates, that Wilmington Spring Grove area tends to be a little bit of a hot spot. But there again, like Dan was saying, we're going to do an intensive well water testing 2018. We're getting that rolled out right now. So there again, we'll know more here in the near future. As far as impaired waters, in Houston County, we do have stretches of impaired waters on that, but I think we're more safe than unsafe as far as
And where might those impaired waters be?
The Root River is a good one, below Holka, near Holka there, where, of course, is the outlet of it. That's been impaired for quite some time. There again, with the intensive water testing, we're going to get a more focused point on that. And from those reports, we can now treat the upland treatment of those areas more efficiently. So, yeah.
For protecting more groundwater, we do abandoned well sealing. We advise farmers to avoid or put buffer strips around sinkholes, sensitive features that is a direct conduit to groundwater. So.
And the enforcement is effective if there is a problem. The county commission and the county and the state give you the authority, and the farmers respond to any kind of enforcement when you have to discuss it with them?
Correct. The landowner cooperation is really good in Houston County. We do have one situation where we do have a landowner at the moment isn't working real good with us. So we've been working with Sam with that as well. So, but yeah, the landowners, they don't like to destroy what they have either. So we've been working real good. This new buffer program is addressing some of that as well. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Anything else, Dan?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
So entertain motion to end the public hearing portion.
No, I think it's still draft form. Yep, so that'll be.
I'll make a motion to end the public hearing and go back to the regular meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The regular meeting is now open. I see Mary in the back there.
Do we need to vote on anything for this public hearing? Nothing? Just-
No, he said it's still in draft form, so why don't we take a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back. I'll go back to business. Mary Marshall and John Puglisa. Good morning.
Morning.
Well, as mentioned earlier, I think Bruce asked, there's been some discussion from a commissioner or two about potential for either a county administrator or county coordinator. Mary and John have come from a county where they worked with which? The administrator or coordinator?
I worked with both.
With
I
both.
just worked with an administrator.
Okay. And so, did you request it?
Yeah, so I guess I can start this off. I had conversations with both Mary and John. They had mentioned that, their former counties in Beltrami County, they'd had an administrator. Mary had mentioned that she'd worked with both a coordinator and an administrator, and I had asked them if they would feel comfortable coming in and talking to the board and answering questions, since they are both department heads that have experience working underneath an administrator, that they could kind of share their side of it from a department head aspect of what it's like and answer any questions that the board may have for them, so we can kind of get a firsthand experience of the grunts down in the trenches doing the work and working under them to see what it was what it's like. I had mentioned to both Mary and John that I said I would assume it'll be pretty informal, just question answer session. They could maybe talk about their experience, and then if commissioners have questions, ask the questions and we can hear straightforward. So I guess if everybody's okay with that, I guess maybe just ask Mary and John, maybe kind of give us some background as far as their work at Beltrami County, what it was like, what it was, their thoughts, feelings on an administrator, and kind of maybe just give us a baseline of what that was like.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep. Well, I can start, if that's okay. Good morning.
Yeah, and then John, if you want to say something, just let motion, and I'll try to.
Try to slow Mary down.
I don't get it.
If that doesn't intimidate you, not much else will.
It doesn't really. You always say consider the source. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, commissioners, this is kind of what my experience has been in a county up the river, as John would say. 28 years I spent working there, and of those 28 years, both as 22 of those years as a public health director, and then the last 7 years or so as the Health and Human Services director. And of those 28 years, the first probably 5 to 6 years worked under the administration of a county coordinator. And then post that, 3 county administrators during my duration there. It was interesting what I think what happened when we first had a county coordinator. There really was no what we would call kind of a supervisory role. Certainly the coordinator served at the pleasure of the board. I don't recall them steering any type of strategic planning or budgeting, that kind of thing. And I think what really happened is that the county quickly kind of outgrew that business model, and they were looking really to expand into a more professional management organizational structure. And so through attrition, then when that coordinator left, they decided at that point that they were going to go with a county administrator model. My experience with a county administrator really, it's all been positive. I know that the county administrator really was the person that was kind of the key entry point for all of the county affairs that was really placed in that person's charge. We had the pleasure really of working with 3 really fine county administrators. They were mentors, they were stellar leaders. They advocated for the county at both a state and a federal levels. It wasn't unusual to see them going and testifying on whatever the county issues were at a statewide level, and sometimes even at a federal level. I saw that happen. They really were helpful on particularly policy issues and implementation of policy issues in the health and human services world. They provided some general supervision to county department heads, coordinated various activities that we were involved in. I think for me personally, one of the things that I really appreciated is that they helped me in my department set and target some departmental goals and really held me accountable. And that really helped to get things across the finish line. I always felt like we worked side by side because it was in everybody's interest to see that we were all successful. They often, every year that I was aware of, prepared the capital expenditure plans. They provided execution of all the ordinances and resolutions, and provided full technical assistance to the board. And I saw an awful lot of support, for the board. Many boards coming in, many board members through the years, through 28 years. But really, that common entry point for citizens, department heads, and the board was a tremendous assistance. I think that was also helpful in that they really, it would clarify the board's position on different things. If I wasn't certain, which way the board was leaning or interested in moving my department forward, that county administrator really assisted in saying, yeah, no, this is really what the direction and the intent of the board was to follow through. And so I think the timeliness and the abilities to get things done and get things across the finish line was of tremendous value to the county and to the department that I oversaw. Let's see, what do you have to say? I'll let you talk now.
Okay, so my experience in this county up the river, I was director of a community collaborative for 12 years and worked very closely with the county, county human services, public health, and very, very closely with the county administrator. I did that for 12 years, and then I worked with County Human Services for 8 years. So my experience with that was through two administrators over 20 years. So part of my experience comes from a community organization or community member and interacting with the county as a player on larger community things, but then also as an internal member of the staff. As I think of it, Mary's done a nice job of outlining some of the things that we experienced. I'd say the big thing that I would characterize it as is the county administrator really was charged with communicating the collective voice of the board. And so as we, as either a community organization, community members, or internal staff, internal leadership, if we're kind of wondering where the board wants to go on something, it was a single point that you'd go to. And oftentimes it wasn't even so much that we were puzzled about that because it was communicated very well. And the administrator would let us know on a variety of different things, as Mary mentioned, on policy-related issues. Sometimes policy-related issues required cross-department work. And so rather than having to kind of initiate that from a department head perspective and trying to figure out exactly where the board wants to go with that, the administrator kind of led the charge on that. Again, I guess I always assumed they acted with the voice of the collective voice of the board. So if it's a priority of the board, they'd bring it to us and we would have to operationalize that. One of the things I'd say too is, regardless of whether we agreed with what the policy positions or budget positions or whatever were, that really wasn't our position. It was more, we need to be fulfilling the wishes of our elected leaders and having a good sense of what that is. My experience too, I worked with two administrators. It was very positive. People that I didn't always agree with. Sometimes there was spirited debate. Sometimes you'd bring different initiatives and attempt to make a case so that the administrator would carry it with you to the board. And I think that was healthy. I look at my experience with both of those administrators as extremely positive, but not always easy. It isn't like everybody agrees on everything, but it was an effective and I think healthy process for us to get the people's work done.
Questions? Go ahead.
Okay. Now, both of you have had obviously very positive experiences with that kind of position. Now, there's bound to be some downsides. What are they? What do we have to look out for if we really take this seriously and really go into this? What are the downsides?
I'll maybe toss something in to start off with. I've noted with you guys before that I served on an elected board in Bemidji on their school board, and I kind of saw the county administrator very analogous to a school superintendent. And my role on that board was we had one employee, and that employee was the superintendent. And so being really careful about how we selected that person and making sure that they bring the skill set and the talents and experience to be able to operationalize what we as a board were looking for. And not just getting that person in the door, it's paying attention to what they're doing, making sure that you're managing that person and that your collective will is being carried properly. And so it's an ongoing relationship. And if you don't have that, if it's something like, okay, we can check the administrator off the list, and it's not something that you're working on an ongoing basis with each individual board member as well as collectively, I think you can run into some communication challenges. And but I think the downside would be if you look at it and say, okay, that's done, we don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't think it really changes the role of a board member. It really doesn't change in many ways the role of a department head, but it gives you a good conduit between the two and a more efficient way of getting certain things done. But you also probably want to hire somebody who's a leader and can advocate certain positions and help direct where you're going. As a board member, there were times that I knew enough to be dangerous, but having a trained educational professional, I could bounce something off the superintendent and say, okay, so I think this, what do you think? And so it was a real give-take cooperative relationship. Without that, I think it could be a layer in between that could be onerous for you.
Well, having served 19 years on a board of education, I relate to that. And the thing that I see with, the main pitfall that I see for us going into this is writing a job description. And I'm really kind of nervous about that. The things that I have read about the county coordinator thing and the things that I've heard other county board members from other counties say about it, and I've heard the same thing from people doing the job, is that it really gets kind of dicey sometimes about what's in that, especially the coordinator's job description. I think it's a little bit more cut and dried as far as the job description of an administrator is.
You probably have some assistance with your Association of Minnesota Counties.
Yeah.
I know when we were looking at things with school district, the MSBA, Minnesota School Board Association, was invaluable. And, there's 87 counties, and many have been in this same situation or wrestled with whether they want to do this or not. But I think you're dead on, Commissioner, that and kind of to the point I was saying is you got to have a really clear idea of what you want this to be, and then design the position and recruit the right person for it.
Yeah, and every county is a little different.
Exactly.
And of course, that's going to be a bit of an issue because that's going to determine what we need in the job description. So it'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
From that standpoint.
The needs of Houston County are very different than the needs of this county north of here. And so because things worked in one county doesn't necessarily mean that they're exactly what is needed in the different county.
How large is Beltrami County population?
About 46,000.
46,000. Did the administrator have to have a staff, like somebody to answer the phone,
No.
Because aren't they out of the office a lot with meetings and?
As I recall, it was.
There was some administrative support.
There was some administrative support, but over the years there was less and less, and some of those duties got kind of spread out between auditor and personnel. So I think initially when there was first a county coordinator, there was like an executive secretary type person. And then through attrition, again, that kind of was weeded out. And then the administrator was really set up and housed in the same place next door to personnel and next door to the county auditor. And then they gained some efficiencies and support that way. you know, rather than having their own, so to speak, executive secretary. That didn't happen.
Because it seems like they do go to a lot of meetings statewide and
They do.
district-wide.
Yep, yep. And, you know, in order to keep us kind of relevant and current, you want them to be out and about and bringing back information to you and speaking up for, you know, what needs to happen here.
I think personally that speaks to volumes to me as far as what I'd be looking for in terms of keeping tabs on state changes, state, you know, what potentially could come from the state and how it might affect us and so forth. And very difficult as a commissioner, quote unquote, part-time, to have a handle on all of those things, at least working knowledge on many of them is a little bit more than I signed up for, so to speak. But I guess one of the things that if we would choose to go this route is, I think John mentioned what kind of a person you hire and how they work with people and how you perceive that they would work with them, because my feeling is that some of the current staff might be looking or perceiving it as, now we got Big Brother watching us, and that would not be a good approach to it. I'd rather be that it's Big Brother or sister working with us, all for a common goal. And right now, again, with 5 of us all representing different areas and with different perspectives, it'd be nice to narrow the focus and then have somebody carry out that focus or goal, I think.
You know, Commissioner, I think, I don't recall ever in my 28 years of feeling like somehow somebody was looking over my shoulder. I really felt it as a true assistance. And I can think of many times, but one in particular that both John and I were involved in Health and Human Services, when we were in the process of really trying to move the county forward with EDMS, document management system, electronic document management system. And our county coordinator, our county administrator had to really kind of get in the trenches with us to learn, because it was such a huge expenditure and an investment in the county, and you know, looking at what kind of metrics were we going to use, what kind of data were we going to use to support, you know, moving forward through the years. Our county coordinator really got in the trenches with us to look and to research and to be able to make a case to the board that this investment was really a good investment and that this was a way that we should go. So, I mean, I always felt like, even when we were kind of out there on a limb with a saw in our hand, that the administrator was there with us and that we were there to serve the best interests of the county. And because of the relationship and the trust between the board and the county administrator, you know, we were able to get that done. I mean, if the administrator kind of put his stamp on it and saying, yep, I think this is the way that we should move forward, you know, the board didn't have to get into the trenches with us to learn about the 1,000,001 reasons why we needed to do electronic document management and have this huge expenditure. They had the trust and the faith in what it was that we were bringing forward with the county administrator.
I think, too, having an administrator who is communicating the collective voice of the board, that person can work with the department head so that what you're bringing forward, you're designing so that it is respective of that, or it respects those perspectives. And you guys face the voters, and sometimes in administration in the county we can become a little bit removed from that, and so it's important to hear that and be able to then make sure that what we're fashioning to be able to meet the outcomes and the goals of the department, we can say, well, we know that the board has these wishes or these priorities, or we know that the board will or won't do these types of things. And that way it was more of a collaborative relationship and approach to bringing things forward and supporting things. The other thing I'd say is, as far as, Big Brother or whatever, county government, you have everything from health and human services, veteran services, to roads and bridges, law enforcement, taxation, land issues. It's a huge array of different important issues. I don't know that one person could micromanage all of those things. And in my humble opinion, I don't think you're going to want somebody who's going to go and micromanage all those things. You've got a lot of really talented administrators in the county who know those areas really, really well. But the way I see an administrator is more kind of like they orchestrate all those things. As opposed to knowing all the fine detail and all those things and telling people what they can and can't do. More of a leadership type of role.
That's good.
So two questions. The second one first. You'd mentioned getting things across the finish line. Do you have any examples, like in Houston County, of things that they would be able to help get through the finish line? Like when you say that, like, how could we relate to that? Like, do you see things here in Houston County that have not gotten across the finish line that you say, oh, if you had an administrator, that probably would have gotten done faster, easier, or anything?
Okay, well, I can think of one thing. So I think it's a challenge when there isn't just, the chain of command sometimes isn't really clear. We essentially have 5 bosses.
Right.
As does every other department head in the county. So let's say that you were looking to get a new or revised public health nuisance ordinance. And
I'm sorry, a new or revised one?
A public health nuisance ordinance. Mm-hmm. And something like that really crosses many departments. I mean, we're looking at health, we're looking at human services, we're looking at county attorney, we're looking at planning and zoning. It's sometimes can be difficult to kind of shepherd all those people together without one person saying, here, department heads, get this done. And so, I mean, I can think that that's, something that's kind of out there that we need to have happen. And so that would be one example of where I think, having one person to report to, having that be a goal, even if it came from the county administrator saying by the end of, 2019, X, Y, and Z departments will see that there's a new public health nuisance ordinance in place, and kind of charge us with getting that done, as opposed to 5 of you having to figure out who you need to tell what to.
The challenge with that kind of work, cross-department work, is, maybe in public health, that's a very, very high priority. In human services, it's a priority, but maybe it's not at the top of the list. In land use, maybe it's even a lower priority. And so if it's going to be championed by one department head, how do you get those other department heads where maybe it's a priority, but it's at a different level? And that isn't a negative thing or anything. It's just, all of us as department heads have a pretty full schedule and a full set of things that keep us very occupied all day long. But if that's something that's important to the board and it cuts across those departments, then having one person to say, okay, we need to get this done. So if it's number 5 on my list of priorities, but it's number 1 on Mary's list of priorities, I put space in my day to participate in that process and make sure we get it across the finish line. Where if it's not, maybe I make Mary mad because I'm not as attentive to the fact that it's a higher priority for her agency than it is for mine.
Careful there, John. Second question?
Second question. Can't speak for everybody, but what I've seen, we all have fairly thick skin. So I will ask the question. You both have now been working at the county for a year or two, minimum, a couple years. Thoughts as far as, how things are run here at a county level without an administrator, what do you see? You know, I guess I'm giving the opportunity to, without judgment, maybe shed some light on some of the problematic areas that, you know, do you feel that we're doing just fine? Do you feel, well, if you had to administrate this and this would be better, or we're running into problems with this and this? I guess I'd like to hear from your side what you think could be improved or not improved or whatever.
I think there's some big things, again, cross-department things like a county budget.
Mhm.
We've got, in my short time here, I've got to say, we've got a lot of really good people committed to what they do. They do a good job. But having kind of a unified, here's how you do this, here are the steps, it's, for me, it's taken a bit of time, and I'd say I'm still learning how to address certain things. Is an administrator the only answer to that question? I don't know that we can sit here and say that. It's one answer, and it's one that both of us are familiar with. We've lived in that type of a situation and seen that it was effective, but it isn't the only way. I haven't really interacted with anybody here in Houston County that I would say is destructive or obstructionist or, you know, really, really difficult. But trying to figure out, okay, here's the set process for getting certain things done. It takes a fair amount of time to ferret that out, and I've had a hard time determining whether that's because it's hard to figure out or because I'm new. And so I feel like I haven't been here long enough to have a real strong opinion on that. But there have been some things that have been challenging to kind of figure out, okay, so if we need to get this done in human services, what are the steps to get it done?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I've probably been here a little bit longer, maybe 4 years in February, and certainly I think some of the challenges that I've seen have been, again, go back to, you know, having 5 bosses and no coordinator administrator. The budget process seems, you know, at times kind of cumbersome, and you know, it's maybe one way one year and then kind of a different way another year, and sometimes that's because we have a change in elected board. I understand that. So that has been a challenge. I think for me personally, it's also, you know, I'm again coming from the county up the river, in a bigger county. We had plenty of opportunities and to interact more with the whole board in talking about strategic plans and priorities. And you know, when you don't have kind of a big county vision of this is where we're headed, it makes it difficult to kind of funnel that down into each of our own little departments, you know, so that we're not siloed. And so for me, that's been more of a challenge, because I've been used to kind of having a bigger vision. These are our goals. These are our priorities for the next 3 to 5 years. This is where we're headed. This is what we expect from you department heads as far as, you know, your outcomes. And that is a challenge. That's a challenge. And particularly as we think about our, you know, our resources are kind of shrinking. Our capacities are really being challenged. We're being asked to do, you know, the typical more with less. And we want to deliver, but it is difficult when there isn't some strategic plan in place and there aren't some priorities that are really clear.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mary, because I think that overall vision for the county was something that I would say was clear. And I kind of alluded to it in saying, okay, if you have a sense of the collective will of the board, then you fashion the things that you do to try and meet those stated goals and intentions. It isn't like an administrator, in my experience, wasn't like the administrator goes and holds up with the board and then comes and speaks for the board. I mean, what Mary describes is it was much more of an organic process, and you know, so then you're finding how can what your department is responsible for fit into that larger perspective. And, you know, I look at it, having sat on the other side of the table, it's always hard to kind of balance competing interests. What's more important, a mile of road or a child in placement or an immunization? Dang, how do you compare those things? But if you can put it into the context of where the county is trying to go big picture, I think it helped us as leaders in the county to be able to contextualize it for board members, and hopefully it was helpful to the boards that we work with.
You had mentioned budgeting, and I personally think Carol does a great job as far as trying to get it coordinated, but I've seen, you know, the budgeting process like you just mentioned as far as where the priorities. I guess, Carol, since you're here, you know, I'm curious your thoughts too. I mean, as far as, you know, like the budgeting and getting things organized, do you think it would help having, you know, I mean, as far as, you know, coordinating between the board and the department heads and that kind of stuff? I mean,
I guess I really haven't had a lot of time to think about it, so I don't know, I think it would be helpful if the department heads were more open to
yeah.
you know, the finance department and the county board, you know, just deciding what they wanted to do with the budget would be helpful also. Of course, you know, I've never worked with an administrator or coordinator, so I guess
Sure.
Any other questions?
How did
One-
you, go ahead, Fred.
When I took this job, ran for it, however you want to say it, one of the things that I thought that the county needed was what you people have talked about. We need better cooperation between individual departments in a lot of different ways. I talked about that at the first department head meeting that I attended back in February, I think. And yeah, there's cooperation between departments, but at a different level than I'd like to see. And you've hit on something that really kind of interests me in that respect, that you feel that a coordinator or administrator can really help that. I see the logic in it. My original premise was I really don't think that we need to add another level of administration in this size organization. That was my original premise. And after having worked with it for almost 11 full months, I'm questioning that premise. And I'm seeing where there's really probably a need for it, because I have, at least in 11 months, I haven't been able to facilitate the kind of cross-department cooperation that I'd like to see. I still see what one of you referred to as silos. I still see that. I see more of it than I'd like to see. There is, I feel, an increasing amount of interdepartmental cooperation, and I'm delighted with that. But I also see a lot of need for improvement. The other thing that I see, and the three of us that are new on the board talked about this when we were at an AMC meeting back in January, that we really need to see, we really need to have an overall vision for where we as a county want to be and the direction in which we want to move. And we really haven't done a very good job of following through on that. I'm not really sure why it hasn't happened, but I know that it hasn't happened to the extent that I'd like to see it anyway. And you're telling me that the position of coordinator administrator has been very beneficial in that respect in your experience. So I'm getting more intrigued by it. I really am. I'm done talking now.
Scott? I just said, how did you see the relationship with, say, 5 commissioners and a coordinator, administrator? How did they interact? Basically in a board meeting setting, or a lot of one-on-one, do you know? Because it still gets hard, no matter what, with 5 people, only 3 can get together, or 2 together at a time. It gets hard to relay any information and be on the same page with a lot of things. I just wondering if you could give any of how it kind of worked between the board and administrators.
Well, in my experience, I think that there was an awful lot of exchange and dialogue between individual commissioners and county administrator. I don't remember, it's been so long with the coordinator, but certainly with the county administrators, you know, where the administrator pretty much had the open door, and you know, they were available to the commissioners much of the time. And I think, actually, I do think that that really helped as far as getting the board kind of aligned on some potentially difficult issues. You know, understanding that it is difficult for you to be visiting back and forth because, I mean, of the data or the law and everything else. I saw a lot of you know, commissioners having conversation with a county administrator about all kinds of things, and I think that was helpful. Our county board, or the county board, typically would meet for what they call their commissioners' meetings, which was open to the public, but it wasn't, there was no action taken before each of their board meetings, their board session. And at that point, you know, the county administrator could kind of relay any communication that he had, that he wanted to make sure that all commissioners, not every commissioner came in and visited. There certainly were some that just weren't interested in doing that, you know, personal preference. But if there was something that needed to be communicated to the whole board and publicly, it was at those board sessions. And I think they went from like 3 to 4:30, and then from 5 to whatever was their formal board meeting. And so there was a lot of information exchanged that way.
My experience was similar to what Mary's saying. You know, I think there was a lot of communication between board members and administrator. Certainly work sessions that were open to the public. Probably a lot of communication over the phone, email. I'd also add that, you know, in my role as a school board member, and interaction with a superintendent, that was critical. I don't know how I could have done that job. You know, I served for 12 years, and you know, you have a host of different issues that face school districts as well, and you know, you get calls from constituents or teachers or staff or whatever, and I'd often call the superintendent and say, why are we in this fight? And that was really important, to be able to get a perspective on where we're going and what are some of the legal issues around this. What can I say? What can't I say? How does that align with where we're trying to go big picture as a board? So I think all of those were ways that you know, an administrator would interact with the elected board.
All right, anyone else? Thank you very much.
We still have our jobs.
To be determined.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you have other questions, feel free to ask.
Sure.
You know.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks very much. Okay, we have action items, approved claims, human service, and license center disbursements.
Make a motion to approve claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approved. Reappoint Maynard Welcher to CCWSD for 3-year term. His current term expires 11/30 of 17.
I'll make a motion to approve, to reappoint Maynard Walsher to the CCWSD for 3-year term.
I'll second it.
She's got it.
Any questions or comments?
I guess I only have one. This is more maybe a process thing. I just want to make sure that we're doing it right. In having been on that board at one point, you know, when their term's up, we reappoint as long as they want to go. Do we need to open that for other potential people that would like to be on there for an opportunity? The only reason I get that is now it's kind of a lifetime appointment without asking, and we've gotten into that a couple other times. So not that we necessarily have to have a huge debate on it today, but just looking forward, you know, especially you know, beginning of the year when we appoint people, that is that something we need to be cognizant of, is once somebody's appointed, they get to determine how long they want to be on, which then makes it a lifetime appointment. That, yeah, I'll be on it every time without offering it up to any, I don't know.
No,
It's just a question I need to say.
That's a valid point.
With other things, so it's like, you know, I don't know that there's a lot of people running, but who knows? Maybe somebody wants to.
Well, and I think maybe that's maybe more of it is, do we just say this position is open, and if there's other applicants, now's the time. Otherwise, you know, in this example, Mr. Welcher has expressed that he would like to continue to be on if nobody else is interested. I mean, I'm just wondering if do we need to make the opportunity available?
Does the
Or do we
watershed,
need
does
to
the watershed
tell?
do this already?
Yeah, do we
I don't
need
know.
to
That's
tell
the
that organization, hey,
That's what
you
right.
need to, yeah,
Open
because
this
it's
up
not
a
up to us to do that.
No.
It's up to that organization to,
Right.
you know, we've got to say, hey, you need to make sure that you make this available. If
Yeah.
somebody else
And
will, at
maybe they
least,
already do.
so that you've got it, and maybe they're doing that. I don't know.
Well, and I think, you know, like as far as, you know, does it need to be just said in the paper or whatever that, hey, this position's open, if anybody would like to, here's a chance to apply. I know you probably, in like many positions, there's not a lot of people interested in it.
Yeah,
But if you don't make it available, then we get the other side screaming, saying, I don't have the same opportunity as anybody else because now they're in it. When do I get a chance? And I just want to try and make sure that we're not
Well,
keeping
another
us too
aspect of
close.
this, for me, is that I don't know Maynard from
Yeah.
Adam, you know.
I mean, I know him very well, but other people don't know him at all.
Right,
I
so,
know pretty well too.
so, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you'd speak up if,
Right,
Maynard
the
was-
reason I didn't think he should be, but do you, Fred, could you check into that? See how they handle it? Maybe it's
Yeah,
already handled.
yeah.
And I
got
guess
it.
then
I got it on my notes.
well, at this point, we've had a second from Maynard, so should this be moving forward, or do
Yes.
you want to hold?
no,
on?
I would say move it forward. I'm just saying in the future, do we need to be
Right.
kind?
That's what I'm
Yeah.
driving
And the
at.
only last comment you just made that, I guess, looking into this is this something that, I get it, we oversee that, but is it even something that we should, I mean, it's kind of a rubber stamp
Yeah.
thing, like Jack said, we don't know who he is, so
Like-
of course.
Like you said, maybe they're already doing it, we just aren't aware of it.
Right, right.
Okay, fine. We'll just be aware
I
of
guess
it
if we
then.
haven't heard, I've never heard any, not, I've been on that long for people to say, you know, why didn't I get on?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it'd be worth just asking the
Yeah,
questions.
just
Yeah.
ask, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Maynard's reappointed. Consent agenda, correspondence payroll regarding various changes. That was in your packet.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Discussion items, commissioner reports. Fred?
Well, I'll go back to one that I didn't make last week because of the time. The water planning meeting that I attend in Orinoco every other month. It's the same problem that we sort of tussled with a bit here this morning. It's a funding problem. The state has mandated you will do this and you will do this and you will do this, and they don't really give much of a framework, and sometimes they don't give very clear funding on how it's gonna actually get done. And we do have, as a gentleman pointed out here, we do have as a county and as a state. We do have some water quality issues here and there. We don't have very many of them in this county, and I don't think they're very serious, what we have found from going to water quality meetings locally. There's not anything that's really awful here, but there are some areas that we could improve in. And we're fighting that funding battle. And in December, we will know, I think, quite a bit more, because Bowser will have made up their minds what they're going to do with funding. And I don't know the answer to that yet. So let's...
Teresa?
I didn't have any meetings last week. I gave you a big report last week. I have a long one on Thursday up in Rochester, but I'll report on that next time.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
Criminal Justice Center meeting, but nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that they want to bring in front of the board, just discussions on streamlining everything that's got to go through all their different departments and between the judges and social workers and everything. And they seem to do a really great job of talking and trying to keep everybody in the loop and figure out what signatures are needed, what aren't, what we're duplicating, what we're not, who should be contacted when. It's pretty quite interesting and how many people are involved to make any little thing happen.
Okay, thank you. Justin?
The only thing is just kind of keeping the ball going a little bit here. I had a discussion with a gentleman, Matthew Hilgart from AMC, as far as administrator, coordinator, just trying to get some their take on it. There was a gentleman in the new commissioner conference, or new commissioner, the 101 deal that all the commissioners do through the state. There was a gentleman from Pope County that had a presentation about it. He has since retired, and I had called to find out if they had still had that presentation on, the difference of the coordinator, administrator, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so they had directed me to Matthew Hilgart, and Matthew had said that they have a presentation for counties that are in our position that are just exploring that possibility. He said what they like to do is bring an administrator and a coordinator to the board meeting so you can ask questions from them specifically. And then Matthew said he's got a 30-minute presentation to, I guess it's just kind of a general overview of the pros and cons and of each coordinator, administrator, some of the highlights, and then you have a question and answer session that you can ask directly. I had asked him if that's something that they would be willing to do if the board wished, and he said absolutely. Just let them know and they can try and make that happen. So I guess that was one of the things I just wanted to ask the board is we had a chance to hear from department heads, but now to actually have an opportunity to hear from administrators and coordinators and have the AMC come down. I guess if the board was okay with it, I would like to contact Matt and see if they could make that happen, and then we get an opportunity to ask some questions from that side. And if after that it's something the board wishes or doesn't wish to do, we've at least thoroughly explored it.
Would we think about opening it up to public comment and questions also?
That's what he had mentioned. In what he had said was, I said, what, the only problem is, he said that, obviously coordinators and administrators have their own county board meetings on Tuesdays. So he said what we would like to do, if Houston County was open to it, they would like to come either late morning or early afternoon, but have it open to the public, that you could have public comment and just kind of a general open public question answer deal, kind of like we do with the Joint Board of Health, at 1 o'clock we'll reconvene for this, or whatever the time that may be. Then people from the public can ask questions, the board can ask questions, just kind of keep it
Probably
open.
include all the department heads too, so they're
And it's just,
communication.
exactly, and it's just an opportunity that they can
question.
ask you
Yeah.
firsthand. So
I told Justin, too, that I'll visit with Matthew at AMC a little bit, too, and get a little
Get some more
Yeah,
more information.
Yeah, we
So
both talked.
If that works, I don't know, if you guys are okay with that, I'd like to at least
Start moving
maybe
that forward a little
make
bit.
that happen at some point in December when it schedules.
Is there a consensus that
Yeah.
we go?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have one follow-up question to that. There's a department heads meeting this afternoon. Should we talk about this a little bit in that meeting?
I certainly would.
What time is that meeting?
Fine, will do.
What time is that meeting?
1 o'clock, same time as your meeting in Mabel.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, because we do have the,
That's why I haven't been going to Mabel.
okay, all right.
Are you
Okay.
still staying back for the department head meeting then? Okay.
Anything else,
That's,
Justin?
that's why I haven't been over there. I've been staying here.
Sounds good.
Sorry about that.
Can only be in one,
That's it?
one place at a time, huh?
Okay, the only thing I spent 2 hours on conference calls yesterday concerning the refinancing of our bonds, an hour with Ehlers and an hour with Standard & Poor's, lady in Chicago, and I think it went well. I would award a gold star to our finance director. She had all the answers. I nodded a lot. Whether they saw that over the phone or not, I'm not sure. But no, would you say, Carol, it went well, right? Yeah, and the Ehlers gentleman thought it did. So we just wait now to get a report back from the Chicago lady. So other than that, I don't have anything. Closing public comment? Go ahead, Beth.
I'll try to make it brief. I'm Betsy Reedy from Money Creek. This is Judge Leahy's decision. I know you all know about it. What I would like to do is urge you to read it. It's very clearly written. There's no fussing, there's no jargon. It's direct. She takes on some of the issues that have been spinning around in this county for years. You know, it's my land routine or the sand is sand routine, and she addresses them very clearly. It's as though she was writing this for the general public. It's very accessible. Please read it. I know you all have copies, and if you've lost them, I'll send you one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Okay.
And I agree, it was very well written.
Yvonne? You got to quit changing hats. I wasn't sure who you were.
Yvonne Krogstad, Caledonia Township. I only have a really short comment. What's happening with the highway shop maintenance building?
We were approached by an individual that has land they would like us to look at that's borders the Houston County existing shop. I was directed by the board then to go ahead and get an appraisal on the property. Got that last night. Getting copies to everybody so they can review it, and then the next meeting I think we'll go into closed session to be able to discuss the appraisal of that property.
The goal there, Yvonne, was to, if we were going to build on site, to be able to operate during a construction. Oh,
I just hadn't heard anything for
Yeah.
quite some time. So
okay.
It was on the agenda today, but I had to, it was a late hour, I got it yesterday.
Okay.
I haven't looked at it, nobody's looked at it, I only have one copy. It's like,
Okay, Bruce and Jeremy, we're already a half hour late for our meeting, so if it's redundant.
No.
Okay.
I'll talk so fast, I'll take some time.
back it up.
Bruce Kimo, Caledonia. In listening to Mary Marshall and John, I can't pronounce his name. Puglisa, thank you. I heard them say to you that the administrator or the coordinator would be
speaking as a single voice for the board to the rest of the county staff what your vision is. I did not hear them say to you that those two individuals, coordinator or administrator, would be creating the vision. I would hope that you understand that indeed you should not be asking either of those two types of position holders to create the vision for you. You still have to do the vision work, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners, good morning again. Thank you. I'll make this brief. I have just two things quickly to say. One is pertaining to, I have an update from La Crescent, the city of, which actually involves the township, and then I'd like to just address very briefly the rail on something that we've noticed and that we plan on taking to some federal offices. Number one, Commissioner Arnold, I commend you. Your verbiage and your words pertaining to having the possibility of an administrator, and that this board is looking at having a county administrator, is very wise. They're highly trained, highly educated. They usually spend a lot of money in schooling to gain that experience, and so I think it would be an asset to this body and to the county. Why? You spoke of vision, and the gentleman before me and people here today have been talking about vision. I exhort you, if you get a chance, speak to Mayor Pellinger. The city of La Crescent, actually namely the good chair of the Planning Commission, Don Smith, who is just retiring after 17 years of faithful, good service to the city. We have just completed, and last night was voted upon, again, some addendums to the comprehensive plan. Not dozens, but hundreds of people over the past couple of years, as you may have known, have come to do an exhaustive comprehensive plan, a lot of effort, blood, sweat, tears, lack of sleep, and MSA from Madison, an excellent consulting firm, has brought forward some very thick, detailed documents on the vision for La Crescent, and it also not only involves the city of La Crescent. Last night, downtown plan was approved by the city council, also the pedestrian and walkway plan, and also the bluff protections plan. All three of those as adjunct plans were added to the comprehensive plan, which I think a lot of us are really happy to see. They've reached out to the township, and so there's some bonding going there. I would exhort, could that plan, just the bluff plan alone was a $13,000 grant recently awarded. Mr. Smith, Don Smith, chair, went out and got that. That's going to allow us to integrate some things with the township that will be beneficial, not just to the city, but to the township and even the county. Winona, Sue Ann Morse, who is involved in a number of things in Winona, spoke of how this may merge Winona County and Houston County with walkways and paths that lead to La Crosse. Could potentially the vision of Houston County dovetail or be enhanced? Can some of the wisdom of this body, your commission, glean from that excellent document and the work that hundreds of people in the city of La Crescent and the township just completed? So I would exhort you, if you get a chance, look at it, or if we can facilitate that information, or a call to Don Smith, even though he's spending a lot of time in Florida coming up.
He's back.
Yeah, he's back.
He's my neighbor.
Yeah, thank God. Oh, poor fellow. On the rail, 13 cars were, a week ago last Sunday night, in the middle of the night, turned over. It looks like it was sand. I'm a former member of CARS, Citizens Acting for Rail Safety. Bruce is an acting member. We engaged over the past few years a number of state and federal representatives and senators, including Ron Kind, Tammy Baldwin, and on the Minnesota side, Klobuchar, and Congressman Walz. In August of last year, there was a conference call with many of those people, including several government agencies. On a phone call, a number of questions were asked of CP Rail and others. We had a terrible incident here in Brownsville, as you recall. We now have an incident near Shore Acres. Our exhortation to you on the rail is this keeps happening. There are definitely issues with inspections and safety on the tracks. It's not just what's being carried and the freight, the cargo, but these tracks are not, we don't think, are being brought up to the safety standards they should be. And so I believe that you do have power, even though this is a federal thing and FRA is involved. We as people, you as a county commission, and even the state, Representative Frank Hornstein is masterful in understanding what's at stake here. You have some power to look into this and demand, not just of your emergency management coordinator, the good sheriff's deputy, but other, I think we should lean toward asking our officials and our agencies to get us more information. Oftentimes they limit that information and say, oh no, due to Homeland Security and for various reasons, that's confidential, we can't let you see those things, but we don't think that's necessarily true. I would only warn, heaven forbid we end up with this continuing, and heaven forbid one day toxic chemicals. Last night the city council voted in that they were going to change some of the not drawbridges, but the gates. There's some thoughts of putting some money into adding additional gates, or looking at the current legislation, federal legislation, which allows them to do some things that would stop horn blowing. Believe it or not, people aren't as worried in La Crescent, the city or township of La Crescent, about what's going through the town. People hate the horns, because as you may have heard, and they're trying to figure out ways to reduce or help CP Rail reduce the need legally to not run the horns. We take a step further and say, well, the reason for the horns is sometimes serious things are being transported. Can we potentially together as a community and as a county look to what's being shipped and how the rails are being maintained and making it safer? I would not want to come to address your fine body and you commissioners and chair one morning after we ever had an incident where something really toxic or flammable exploded, heaven forbid, near Shore Acres, or the amount of traffic that goes...
Especially near Shore Acres.
Especially near...
That place can-
Because if there was property damage, loss of life, even the loss of animals and homes, we'd regret that we didn't look into it. So I would ask you if you could consider that, and we'd be happy to work with you. We
Okay.
have
I plan on following up on that individually, but yes.
And we have some calls into working right now with some of the federal legislators in Washington and Minneapolis, so we'd be
Good.
happy to work with you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, sir.
I'd really be curious to see the amount of derailments in Houston County in the past decade. There's been considerable amount for the miles that they go through.
3 a day nationally. Nationally, it's 3 derailments a day.
Yeah.
DOT111.org, which is Alan Stankovitz, who's a local fella here, actually has a national website where he documents everyone. There was a Lakeland, Florida yesterday. There was a big sulfur spill, molten sulfur floated out.
I mean, they're even doing engines in middle of trains now to haul even more and heavier. It's gotten so ridiculous. So.
And heaven forbid ammonia. If there was ever a wind, I called the Weather Service once to find out some wind mapping information. That since some terrorist things and Homeland Security got involved, they won't issue that anymore. But heaven forbid we ever had like a Lac-Mégantic, Quebec experience where 47 people died in 10 minutes from the inferno. If toxic chemicals like ammonia or something that was to gas got into that inferno and then traveled at 10 or 20 or 30 miles an hour, you could see a 10 or 14 mile wide plume that would travel at great speed, and you couldn't outdrive it, let alone outrun it. And in South St. Paul or La Crescent, they could be devastating. So I hope we can keep that conversation going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anyone?
The only thing, Shara just brought it up too, and I forgot all about it. We had talked about bringing up extending the Board of Adjustment. We were going to talk about it at this meeting. Kind of forgot to bring it up.
Yeah, I tried to print what I had done before. And
I brought it all along too.
Did you? 'Cause I
Yes,
didn't have
all
mine,
the
so
options, yep.
I think we need to.
We have to make a decision on our options.
Do we want to I know it'll be 2 weeks. Oh, and then that's the other question. What is our board schedule going to be now? If AMC meeting's going to be the first week, are we going to have normal morning board meeting the second?
That's what we have on our schedule.
The second week, and then and then is the third week?
Evening.
Third week
Okay.
evening.
Because we have TNT, we have to have that evening meeting.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you want to bring this to the next meeting?
That's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely.
And I would think the first thing we're
On the
gonna do
agenda.
is have to decide how we're gonna do it, right?
We had the three options for both the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission, but we never really made
We
a
never
decision
really got down
which
to-
option we were gonna do, you know, for,
You mean as far as extending it to 5 members?
Yeah, and how to go about picking the members
Yeah.
and stuff, you know.
whether we all
We were gonna
interview,
come up with
whether.
Right.
So,
So let's maybe should we put a little somewhat significant amount of time
Right.
around that at the next meeting?
Yeah,
That's what
put
we
it
said.
on the agenda and get the literature
You
out.
wouldn't have those 3 copies yet, would you, anywhere? We could
I
email
have
back
them
to
here,
everybody.
Sharp, you want to make copies
Okay,
and
wonderful.
email them to everybody?
Yeah, why don't you do
Then
that?
we can all be sitting on the same
Yeah.
information
Okay.
again and
Okay.
It's that A
forward.
personality I have.
you did a good job.
There it is.
I was trying to get it today before I left.
Okay.
I'll
got
give
it
it to
in some
Shar
file
and she
folder
can
somewhere.
email it to
Sounds
everybody.
good.
Probably in the
Anything else?
circular file.
Right, probably is.
Anybody else? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.